Hello and welcome to Comedy in a Nutshell, the podcast where I ask the people in comedy about what comedy means to them. For example, to me, comedy is a great equaliser. Like when someone in the office spends 20 minutes watching you trying to parallel park into a space meant for a bicycle. But then when you get into the office, you find that their name autocorrects to Burger King. I'm the comedy nerd who's seen more than 1,600 comedians perform live comedy. If you want to know more about my journey in comedy fandom, then you can visit my website, thecomedynerd.com. If you like to hear from comedians as much as I do, then please like, subscribe, rate, review and share the podcast. Thank you. My guest this episode is a rising star of comedy who debuted at Edinburgh this year. Once described in her appraisal as insufferably delightful, she's as much fun to talk to as she is to watch on stage. It's stand-up comedian and eBay enthusiast, Ruby Carr.
Hello!
Hiya!
And, oh, the video. Ka-ding.
If you're happy, let's dive in.
Okay! Woohoo!
Do you remember, like, way back when you were, like, at school or growing up, if comedy was an influence on you back then?
Well, yeah, my parents had been going up to the Edinburgh Fringe since I think their first year was 2004, and I know that because of the fridge magnets on our fridge at home. And so they've always liked it, and so I went up in 2005 with them. I just thought we were going up to Edinburgh to stay in a hotel, like this nice hotel which had a swimming pool, and I was like, fuck yeah. So I was like swimming, and then I remember my dad coming into the swimming pool being like, Ruby, we're gonna go see a show, and I was like, fine. And I went with them in a cab, and we pulled up in front of the Pleasance courtyard, and I remember being like, this is weird, why are all these people here? And that was the first year the Pleasance Grand existed. And so we walked up into the Grand, and then I watched Omage Jalili an hour as a 9-year-old, and I just laughed at the same time as when everyone else was laughing. I was like, yeah, this is great. And yeah, but we also had all of the videotapes, so like watching Blackadder and the Two Ronnies, and the Goodies.
Oh wow.
Growing up, the specials, I remember this one I'm really pleased with. This is so that's right. I remember watching Google Whack. That was the first comedy special I feel like I remember watching and feeling like that's a show, as opposed to like Lee Evans, where it's just like chaos. Fun. I love it. But Google Whack was narratively a beginning, middle, end, like a journey that you went on.
Dave Gorman, yes.
Yeah. Oh, I hadn't said that. And yeah, so I remember that. And actually, when I this year got offered my room for eBay, my debut, the first thing I did was rewatch Google Whack, because I was like, and I didn't realize when I watched it, I didn't realize how much that had influenced me in my comedy and just my personality. And I was like, oh, okay. And so it was nice when in reviews I got things like a new like a female Dave Gorman, and I was like, yeah.
I was in describing your show eBay, which we'll talk about in a bit. I have described it as it's like Google Whack Adventure, but with a lot more energy. So
yeah, I love Google. And watching it back when I seen it again, I was like, oh, see, that's the kind of stories I want, where you just sort of pull at a thread and you find something and you just keep going. And yeah, I think watching that and it was because my dad studies web science and computer science, and so there's always a conversation about the internet when we're at home. So seeing something that was internet based and comedy was like, I love this. Yeah, it was great.
So would you say that people like Dave Gorman, obviously Dave Gorman, but his and maybe other influences were major inspirations for you to do comedy?
Yeah, I whenever I think about it, I'm like, I think people who I felt like I carried with was like, I want to make things like that.
Yeah.
One is Dave Gorman, and I feel like every fucking child of my era would also say Dick and Dom in the Bungalow, because that shit was insane and I loved it. I love chaos of Dick and Dom. I was explaining Dick and Dom in the Bungalow to someone, so Catherine Higgins, who grew up in Ireland, famously, and so she didn't know it, and I was like, you don't know Dick and Dom in the Bungalow? It's mad. And so I showed her a clip, and when we were watching it, we didn't realize Greg Davies was in Dick and Dom in the Bungalow. He would be like coming in as an actor, and I was like, what the fuck? Everyone calls it Dick and Dom in the Bungalow. This is what I just like the the chaos of them just doing whatever they wanted, and everyone going, yeah, all right. So
you can't conceive really these days of someone going in and saying, so what's the show? Yeah, here's somebody, make it. You can't imagine it.
they wouldn't dare. They wouldn't. It was so good. Oh, and it filled up what it was from 8. It was like 4 hours solidly, just them.
Yeah.
These two idiots. And then like TV shows in between. But that was like an insane thing for them to be doing every Saturday and Sunday, just to be dominating one channel.
Yeah.
Oh, the dream. Yeah, I love that stuff.
But if you think back, and you mentioned the goodies, I mean, something like that being made, can you imagine pitching that?
Yeah.
It's inconceivable.
And they were just allowed to just make what they wanted, and it wasn't really checked until it went on air. Yeah. And those are the things that I watched and things, and I enjoyed that. And then going up and seeing shows when I was a teenager and stuff, heavily being such a judgmental teenager whenever I saw anything and being like, yeah, well, I guess it was all right, but I did try and look at the time, so I'm going to give that less stars because you didn't hold my attention the entire time. And that's so I remember seeing do you know, right, you might know this, Edwin Axel.
Yeah, Ed Axel. Yeah.
Ed Axel. I've been trying to see this man again because I saw him when I was like 14 and I was like, this man's amazing, because he went onto stage like 3 times with different soundtracks. He was like, how's that one? And I was like, this is hilarious. I need to see that man again. This is so random, I'm sorry. I'm losing my path, and I'm just letting every thought take me.
No, I love it. I mean, it's brilliant when you know, we get to hear people who are inspired or excited about acts, particularly acts that might be lesser known or that certainly haven't been mentioned. The Goodies hasn't come up before. Ed Axel certainly hasn't come up before. So it's fantastic that these names get aired, you know.
Yeah, I was back home with my parents this weekend, and they do you remember when the Pleasance, they used to like plaster the walls with all the posters and flyers?
Yeah.
Like they were like covered and plastered, and like it was like I think they stopped doing it because of the environment.
Yeah.
Like not trying to like be wasteful and stuff. But that was like a very like the look it was. You saw them everywhere. So my mum loved that look so much that like through 2011 to 2013, she collected as many flyers as she could, and we did it to the downstairs toilet. Like all the walls were covered. But it means that like there is like an era of comedy that is immortalized in our downstairs toilet.
Wow.
And like there's someone who I found this weekend, there's Eleanor Tiernan.
Yeah.
And then we've got Ali Fear Scott's first show. It's up on the wall. Who else? There's some fun ones. Ed Gamble, and I can't remember who he did his podcast with. Obviously not
Ray Peacock.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. There's 2 of their posters on the wall for their it's like a really weird snapshot of comedy that I look around and go, oh, I know some of these people now.
It must be interesting now because you see these shows, you see these names, and then as time goes by, you can bump into these people on the circuit doing gigs. I mean, what does that feel like? What is that to you when you're on a bill with someone that you sort of 10 years ago you might be going,
yeah, no, it's I think I'm pretty good at being like nonchalant about it, but I think I'm too nonchalant. I know, but it's because like this energy is too much. But then also I feel like this energy is the thing that sells who I am, or at least that's the thing that most people, when I've like befriended people, I get. So like, yeah, when I've befriended people, I just get overly excited about meeting them. I'm like, hello, and so then they're sold this as me. Like, I've got lots of stories about how I made my friends in comedy. But then that means when I meet someone who's cool, I'm like, oh, I don't want to freak them out. I'll just be really nonchalant. And so then I think they just don't care because I'm just like, yeah, hi, nice to meet you. And it's so annoying. And I feel bad, but I don't want to scare them. So like it feels bad. I want to be me, but I feel like I would be too much if I met cool people. After I was in Soho Theatre, which but you just standing in Soho Theatre, you're going to bump into someone and be like, oh, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But that's just so. And I was talking to who was I trying to? Oh, I was talking to Stu Laws.
Yep.
About because I think I'd just done my Soho Rising show of eBay.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to him, being like, "Oh, thanks so much for coming." And then because this is when I was trying to be like, "You want to be my director, please?" And so we were trying. And then Katie Wicks came over to the conversation because she's friends with Stu Laws, and they were chatting. And I was like, "What the fuck?" I was trying to be like super chill about it. But the best thing about it is that she had her phone in front of her, showing that her Uber was arriving in 3 minutes. So I know I only have to be the coolest person on earth for 3 minutes. I was like, and then I can like, so I was like, good. It's so nice having a timer in front of you of how long you need to like keep up the pretense of I'm actually really chill and nice. But yeah, otherwise, yeah, making Hannah Platt, who also debuted this year.
Yeah.
She is one of my most recent victims of Become My Friend Now, please. I saw that she was debuting, and I didn't have my core group of friends coming up to do shows this year. And so I was like, oh, I need to make sure that when I go up, I've got people up there who I'm like excited to see and I can hang out with and stuff.
Yeah.
So I knew I was doing a gig in Manchester, so I messaged her and I was like, hello, I believe we'd be really good friends. Please can we be friends and get a drink? And that's literally how direct I am when I want to be someone's friend. So she was like, okay. And she said it was weird, but she was very grateful. And then we got a drink afterwards. And then they became friends. And I did it also to Abby Wamba. But when I went, I saw that I was doing a gig with her and I knew she was debuting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went up to her and I was like, Abby, this is my formal request to be your friend, please. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, great, nailed it. So yeah, and I would love to do that with everyone, but I think I get intimidated and scared of lots of people still.
Yeah.
Still.
So what was it that made you want to be a comedian yourself then?
Well, I think, how do I always ended up doing it. So I was in youth theatre, because of course I was.
Well, wasn't everybody.
I was in a youth theatre and I always did the drama things. And if it was a serious play, I'll be playing like ensemble, someone in the background, whatever. If it was a comedy, I was the lead fucking role. Comedy, yes, please. So I sort of realized, and I was like, part of me was like, am I being like, I was like, I think I'm being typecast, but also I love it so much. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I think this is what I want to do. But at this point, I was like, I'm going to be a playwright. I'm going to be a director. I'm going to be in theatre. Mm-hmm. And then when I moved to London and like was still pursuing being like, I think I want to create shows and make things, and I did a great workshop with a performance artist called Bryony Kimmings, mm-hmm. Who's done lots of Edinburghs and things, but creates sort of like big exploration pieces on things within our life. And I've always found it really cool. And so I was doing that and I was like, yeah, I think this is what I want to do. But it's very obviously competitive because and there's lots of people in London trying to do the same thing. And so I was just trying my best, and I was going to go see plays all the time. I remember I went to go see a play by Jess Butterworth, who's one of my favorite modern playwrights. And I can't remember what it's called for the life of me at the moment. It was a nice play. I liked it. It was so long. It was like 4 hours long. It had 2 intervals. One of the intervals was the real interview. One of the intervals was only a 2-minute interval just so they could change some set. It was so long, but I enjoyed seeing it. And I was there with a mate, and I remember saying to her as we were walking out, being like, I'm really glad I saw that. I really enjoyed it. Then a woman in front of us stopped, turned around, and went, oh, you enjoyed it? Well, I understood it. And I was like, fuck. Why did you need to do that? And that felt like the last straw on the camel's back of like, I don't want to do theatre if this is the people I'm doing it for.
Yeah.
They're the worst. And like everything was about like all the times when I was writing applications and funding was all about how is your theatre going to change the world? And I was like, well, this feels like an echo chamber, because people who come to theatre are the people who like that's all just talking amongst yourselves, like unless you're really doing outreach and going out to see people and going out and doing things. Like I just don't understand. So I fell out of love with it, but I still wanted to tell stories. And growing up watching all this comedy and going to the Fringe and seeing stand-up along with theatre, I was like, maybe I'll give stand-up a go. And so Yeah. And so then I was like, this thought came into my head. I eventually did stand up because I did a spare room interview, and I found out that I was competing against 30 other people for a single box room in Hackney. And I was like, I need to make myself sound interesting. So I was like, I do stand up. And I was like, ah! And I didn't, but they picked me. And I was like, great. So I moved in. And then that week was my first time I went and did stand up at the Cav. And I died. I did an awful set, but I was then hooked.
So, Cab, so Comedy Virgins.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Comedy Virgins.
So, I mean, you've said it was terrible, but then you were hooked. So, what was it? If you went out and you did your first gig and it was that bad, what was it that made you want to keep coming back for more?
I think it was. I don't know. I think I just was like, I got two laughs. I remember getting two laughs. um, and I liked the atmosphere and seeing like the like, oh, okay, you go up on stage and you have the attention and you get to say your things. And even though I was bad, I still got my full 5 minutes. Like no one was like, get off. I was like, oh, okay, I can still just be up here and do this. And yeah, from theatre, where you need to have a 2 week rehearsal process and then have a week of tech, and then you get to do like 4 shows over a weekend, from to stand up where I thought about my set that afternoon, wrote it down, and then did it in the evening, and was like, oh, this is so much faster. Like, get an idea, create it, and go do it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it again. And then the next time I did it, I think I then like understood, because I think you when you're at like new people gigs,
Yeah.
like baby people gig, like baby acts, yeah, you can see the people who have been theatre trained, and the fact that the fourth wall is so up. And I was like, I was like, on reflection, I was like, I know I was doing that. I was like, oh, I've hidden from it. Okay, I'm going to try again with a new tactic and give it a go. And yeah. I just, I loved it so much. And it just be like, I can come up with an idea and go try it.
Yeah.
Then you try it on stage with your audience. And I was like, yeah, cool, I'm sold.
Yeah.
I mentioned him earlier, my mate Jack. I did, when I was a teenager, count myself as a bit of I'm very good at comedy, a comedy pro. Like I know what I'm doing with this, which feels very cringe now, but like teenage Ruby was very confident, and I aspire to be her constantly. But, my mate Jack, who now is like a successful actor, he's doing great. But I remember he was like 14 and he was trying really hard to be funny. And he was funny sometimes, but he was also 14 and annoying. And I remember this is so bad. I pulled him to one side one time at our youth theatre because everyone was finding him annoying. And I was like, Jack, you're so funny. You're so funny. He was like, thank you. And I was like, but people are finding you really annoying right now and you're not noticing. And I don't know why you're not noticing. So he came up with a code where he would tell a joke, and every time he would look at me and I'd tell him whether he was doing all right by thumbs up or whether he needed to like kill the joke, and I do thumbs down. Oh God, this is so arrogant on me. But hey, it worked. Now he's a brilliant comic actor. So I take that claim.
Yeah, all credit to you for that one. Yeah. So what about, going into doing comedy then, did anything about it surprise you? Did you have expectations going in?
What surprised me? Okay, what this is okay, this is it's not embarrassing. It's not embarrassing. People are gonna hear it and then be like, that's not embarrassing. But I had an expectation that I was gonna, okay, shut up. Okay. Don't laugh at me. I had an expectation. I had an expectation that I thought I was gonna win. So you think you're funny. I was like, that's for me. That's my destiny. I was like, oh, I just was like, obviously that's good. I didn't get through the heats. But it just seems like a theme for me that I'm like, I'm supposed to do this, horribly fail on the first time I try, and then just keep going. It's worked out. But I was like, I just feel like it's nice I was like, I think it's the expectation. Do you know what I think? Marvelous Mrs. Maisel sold this to so many people. I'd started comedy by the time that this came out, but like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, she goes, do you know what? I'm going to not do any of my material that I've actually been trying and testing. I'm going to go do this TV experience and wing it. Like, I remember that episode and it made me so angry. She was like, I'm just going to do some new on TV. And you're like, no, you've been doing the clubs. Do your club set. But I feel like there is this expectation that lots of people have where like, I'm charismatic and brilliant, so I'll go up on stage and it will be fine and that will carry. And I think learning being like, oh yeah, actually it's really good when you've got things prepared. Early Ruby learned that. That's 2019 Ruby.
I saw you perform in 2019.
No, 2019 Ruby is so different. I mean, she's not pretty much the same.
Big funny fest in Richmond.
Yes, oh my god. Okay, that's fun.
What about going into those competitions then? So going into So You Think You're Funny, but you've done Amuse Moose, of course, finalist.
Yeah, all those years ago.
Funny Women, you were marked out as one to watch a few years ago.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about competitions in general?
I have this conversation a lot because I quite often I love being encouraging to other people. I love being other people's rallying force and being like, if anyone ever tells me that they have an idea or they're like, oh, I was thinking about maybe doing this, I'm then texting them like every week being like, you done it yet? You done it yet? Do you need encouragement? How about you do this? Take the first step, do this. And so like I'm big in that. Like my housemate, Emily Bampton, who is newer comic than I am, but so therefore I can like all the competitions are sort of ahead of her of like entering them and doing them now. And so I talk to people a lot. The competitions are lovely. They're such an like, if you manage to get into a final, having like finalists, having semi-finalists, having those like sort of accolades with you is it can be very useful. It's also going and doing the competitions. It's like a showcase opportunity. I've been booked for loads of gigs just from doing like the heats of a competition or being in the semi-final of competition with someone else. And so then you get like either promoters are there or people who run nights are there and they're like, yeah, I'll put you on, and they book each other from that. So that's nice.
Yeah. But
ultimately the competitions is a snapshot of one day, 5 minutes with one audience.
Yeah.
So you have to, they feel like they have such importance, and they can really like change someone's comedy career if you like win or you get to a point where like the right person sees you. They can have like a huge impact, but they also are not reflective of actually your skill. And I'm not trying to like dampen the people who get the winning things. I'm trying to make people who maybe don't get through to the next round or something, when they're like, I thought I did really well. It's like, yeah, it's just, that was unlucky. That's just unlucky. And it's not actually you being bad. It's just happened to be that it was those people's time, that time, which is really nice for them. And you'd be happy for them. A big thing that I've always promoted is just trying to celebrate other people's successes rather than, so like, it's not that I got a no, it's just that other people got a yes.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's it. Which is a very, it sounds, it's like, yeah, that makes, of course, Ruby, that's what that means. But it feels different when you're like, yay for that person, as opposed to being like, meh for you. Like, it's nicer to pick other people up.
Yeah.
But they can do so much for people, but ultimately, if you don't get it, it's fine. It's true. Like, they can be super useful, but like, they're not something to cry about if you don't get to be the winner of the So You Think You're Funny competition. Yeah. It's fine. And I'm okay about it. And I'm still fine about it.
Yeah. Barely ever comes up even.
Yeah. I think like Funny Women, particularly in the last couple of years, like if you look at their winners, like, so like 3 years ago when it was Lara Rakote, and then that year she won Best Newcomer at the Edinburgh Fringe, and it was like, okay, and then I was like, cool, and then the following year was Lorna Rose Treen, and then it was an amazing year she had following. It was like, oh, what the fuck. It was definitely then like the winner situation was like exceptional, and then Kate Checker, obviously the most recent, who is brilliant, and did you see a show? You must have. I remember saying, me being like, did you see a show in the Edinburgh Fringe? Of course you did. Yeah, ours was wonderful as well, and got lots of lovely responses from the Guardian. Hello. So
One thing that really fascinates me is the show that you did with your dad in
oh
22.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Tell me about that.
It's yeah, the story of me and my dad doing stuff together is just very wholesome and sweet. It's just lovely.
Yeah.
It sort of started off because I started doing comedy again, like not telling anyone because I decided because I forced myself to do it because I did the spare room situation. And so I started doing gigs. And then I was like, okay, right, I'm gonna ring up my parents and I'm gonna tell them I'm doing stand-up. Bow, bow, bow. So I rang them up and I said, oh, I'm doing stand-up. And my dad went, oh my God, no way, me too. And I was like, what? My dad had like signed up to a stand-up course and yeah, and it was partly because him and my mum were talking about, and he said that I think stand up is one of the scariest things you could do, and so my mum just was like, cool, I'm gonna get you that for your birthday. So then ended up doing it, and then this formed like this relationship between us where he always wanted to talk about, like, he's like, oh, I've been writing this new joke, I'm doing this new set. And so we would, rather than it being like, okay daughter, how are you, how are things going, and me being like, cool, how's work, dad, we then had this whole new repertoire of things to talk about like comedy and jokes and shows to go see, and the circuit and stuff, and that became really lovely. And then yeah, and then I was saying to him, I was like, do you want to do an Edinburgh? And he was like, yeah, he's obviously, like I said, they've been going up to Edinburgh since 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd seen me do a couple of Edinburghs and they were really excited about that. And my dad was like, yeah, I'd love to do an Edinburgh. And I was thinking about it, I was like, well, the first show you do is a split bill. You do half an hour and someone else does half an hour. So who would be your ideal split bill partner? And I was thinking about it and I was like, oh shit. I'd done my split bill and I'd done a 45 and I was thinking about doing like the debut next. So I was like, but I think this would be really, I think this is a really nice thing to do, to be like, I did a split bill with my dad for a month in Edinburgh and did all the pre stuff. I mean, that's just like, that's like a whole fucking 4-chapter thing in my autobiography or my memoir later, like when being like, yeah, that's a good story, I like this. So then we planned it and we were planning to go up for the year of 2020. So obviously that didn't happen. But then I went home during the pandemic. And so then we just kept planning it. And then we ended up doing it. And it was very tactical, admittedly. Like I was like, okay, if we do a father-daughter show, that's great. Like people will be like families will come, people who brought their teenagers up will come. Like we've got like people will be interested. We cover loads of generations. We've got this.
Yeah.
And when my dad did sets and stuff, and he's doing comedy gigs, when people find out that he's a web science professor and he works with AI, like he was saying about how all the comedians would come and talk to him at the end, not about his set, but about AI, and would want to know, like asking questions about it and like, what's the future of it? How's it developing? Should we be afraid? Da, 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 da. And everyone was asking this. I was like, then we should just do a show about AI. And then the more we talked about it, it was sort of like, we're trying to find how would we both tell this story? Because obviously I'm not an AI expert. And it was the thing of like, well, at that point I was working in a school and I was like, well, my dad trains robots to get them to behave like humans, and I train children to try and get them to also behave like decent human beings. So I was like, cool, this is a good narrative that we could both play on. So yeah, so we made that, and it just it was lovely to do. But then also my dad's work, Southampton University, they were like, we love this. This is great public engagement. This is great for like the uni's profile. And so we were like, cool, we're just gonna, are you okay if we keep doing it? So we kept doing it. We did a tours around other unis and across the South Coast and a couple of comedy venues. But then we offered like a Q&A afterwards, so people then asked questions about AI, and we'd have like this big discussion. There's some really nice discussions that happened afterwards, and that was really fun. And now I'm helping him develop his, I mean, okay, we don't know, because like Edinburgh applying for a space, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to make my dad debut this year. I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious. But it's going to be great. It's going to be a show about AI, because the uni is very interested. My dad's boss is very interested in us using comedy to make AI less scary, because there's lots of fear mongering in the news at the moment, and we're trying to make like neutralize it and take the piss out of it so that it doesn't hold as much like fear in people's hearts, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
it's going to be a great show, and I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, it's a great show.
Well, what about your debut then? I mean, I saw you do a work in progress at the Brass Monkey, and then of course this year I saw your formal debut twice.
Yeah, thank you.
So tell me about that journey then, I guess, from the working it out to bringing it up this year.
Oh, yeah, no, it's because I knew my debut was going to be eBay. Right, I felt quite strongly about the idea. I knew, so the debut initially, there's a lot of stress and pressure externally put onto you on this idea of the first show.
Yeah.
That I feel like doesn't exist by the time you get to the second show. They're just going on the first one. And I was like, I know there's a lot of extra stress on this one in particular. And traditionally, and I'm saying this in a traditional sense, and not being like other shows are like this, but I did this. I'm trying to say that traditionally the first show is often, a demonstration of everything you've been working towards up to that point, right? Of like the material that you've created over the years of you becoming a comic and then going, this is me. And often it's also reflective of something fundamental about you, like a sort of a introduction of you. And so there'll be something, and it could be like identity based or a story from your past or something that has been influential to you. And so it's like it's going, here I am, this is who I am, this is everything I have, and handing it over as the debut. So yeah, that does sound very stressful as a thing to be like, judge me please. And so I felt going into this, I was like, I could do something like that. I could do a story about me or something like that. But I had this little nagging feeling of like, how funny would it be for me, for my introductory year, to spend the whole time just talking about my favorite website. And I was like, yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do. And so I'm very like I made a conscious choice that for a year and a half, essentially, well, 2 years, making this show, I was not making relatable material, not making something that could be easily broken down and put into like spit bill shows, like when I'm doing like spots and being like, oh, I'm going to do this 10 minutes. I couldn't, because everything in my eBay show required context from something else. I was like, oh, fuck. I really loved it. I loved doing this show, which is an exploration on something that I love.
Yeah.
Which again felt quite Dave Gorman-y in the sense of like finding a thread and pulling it and going, okay, let's follow this and see where this goes, with a big narrative story in it.
Yeah.
And so it started because I am truly obsessed with eBay. It's my favorite place to shop. I don't like buying new. I find it very hard to like rationalize the price of half the things on the high street. And I'm like, I'm not doing that when I know I could like find someone who's like, okay, yesterday I was on eBay and I think I found a Dolce & Gabbana vintage skirt from the 90s currently being sold for $5, because their photos are awful. Like you can't see the skirt, like it's like screwed up, but you can just see the start of Dolce.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. So then I searched for the skirt. I found it. It's being sold on other websites for £900. And I'm like, hello. Getting that in 5 days and 4 hours. That's mine. Yeah. So I truly love it. And I would send my mates auctions like this all the time with like, look what I found. And so eventually someone was like, you should make this your show. And then, yeah, this idea came about. So I started doing this. And so really the first year was just me collecting auctions that I've bidded on, that I've bought, that I found that were intriguing to me, putting that into a big folder in my phone.
Mhm.
And then the first time I did it was at the Vault Festival in 2023. Was that?
Mhm.
Yeah, the Vault Festival last 2023.
Yeah.
And I sort of like put together a lot of these auctions into one PowerPoint and was like, okay, how do people feel about this? And it like I was like, oh, that went really well. That was quite nice. Cool. And so then that first year kind of felt like just like putting in more auctions, taking out an auction, putting in another idea,
Yeah.
and seeing which auctions got the most laughs. Because I was very conscious making it like sort of an internet show. I didn't want to just put up something that was funny, everyone laugh at that, and then me move on. I wanted to make sure that everything I showed, I then made funny, and then I had a comment or joke that added to it.
Yeah.
And that I was the thing being funny, not the thing on the screen. I was very conscious to make sure all of that was happening. So if there was something where the bigger laugh was because of revealing it and not because of something that I said, I was like, right, gone, scrapped. And I'd pick something else.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that I was, not relying on the visuals behind me to be carrying me. I wanted to be the funny thing and the thing that people are obsessed with. Lol. Sorry, my subconscious just let that slip out. Yeah, that's exactly what I want. Yeah, and so I did that, and then I took it to selected for Soho Rising, which was very lovely. I was like, that's absolutely delicious. That's when, so I invited Stuart Laws to come and watch it, because Stuart Laws has such good writing, such good like stage presence and joke creation, and I'm like, oh. I was like, for my show, for it to get even better, and then when I was thinking about people who could elevate it, I was talking to my mates Simon and Alice. I don't think we'd mentioned them.
Simon, Ferdows and Alice India.
Yeah. So and they were like, they also agreed that they thought Stu would be a really good director for it. So I invited them along to try and entice him. I was like, free ticket, and I'd love to hear your notes. Come on. And yeah, I amazingly managed to bully that man into directing my show. I generally do feel like I trapped him in it, because we met up for the notes bit, and I was we did notes, and then I didn't have a venue confirmed yet, so I was like, I'm really like, and we talked about direction, and he said, if you get a room, this is what direction would be like. Gotta. So I was like, cool. So then I got a room, and I was like, well, he told me this is what direction would be. So that felt like he's interested in directing. I was like, great. So I messaged him, but I was like, oh, I've got a room. I'd love to have a meeting with you about direction, about being a director. And he was like, cool. We had a meeting. The first thing he said at this meeting, the first thing was, I don't want to direct anything this year, Ruby. I was like, why the fuck are we here? What is this? But I was joking, because I think the previous years he'd directed so many things, and so this year I think he was trying to not overfill his plate that much. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, I think he's giving me like notes and ideas and things to do. And then at the end of it, he was like, yeah, I'll direct it. And I was like, wow, what the fuck? I was like, this is great. I felt awful. It felt like I tricked him. But alas. And then Stu really helped with the show. One of the main reasons I was like, yes, I want Stu to direct this, is that in the first meeting he said, one of the notes that he gave was that the show didn't give a sense of time. And I was like, ooh, what does that mean? And there was, when you're watching, so at that point when he watched the show, he was like, there was no sense of where we are in this show. Are we in the middle? Are we towards the end? Like, there wasn't like oh, this feels like we're about to reach the penultimate bit. It was just always like a new bit jumping in. And I don't know if I've explained it very well. He explained it much better in a way that made me go, yes, I would like to pay you money to be my director, please. So I was like, that's really interesting, that the audience are trapped with you for an hour, but if you give them the sense of like, we're coming up to the end now, then they can like relax and be like, cool, I know where we are in this, rather than this being a time void where you're not sure what's going on. I was like, that is interesting. I've never considered that before. And so then he helped build in the structure that we had in the show to allow to give a sense of time within it, of like, oh, we're building up to a thing now, we're heading towards this thing, whoa. And then also we would often have meetings where I'd be trying to fix a moment, trying to do something, and it would end up just being like a silly off, where it would be like, what if you did this? Okay, and I'd be like, okay, but if I did that, what if I also did this? Just like some of the dumbest bits came up from just like I do a reveal where I pull out a wad of hair from my pocket, which never really got the response that I was hoping for. But I loved doing it because I was like, that's funny. And that's for me. That's for me, that moment to pull out a wad of hair from my pocket.
I love the fact that you were directed by Stuart, because this year I've come across a few people who've been directed by people that have made me think, really?
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, but it's just an interesting surprise. And because Stuart Laws is very subtle. And with the best will in the world, and all due respect, you are the opposite of that. You are,
yes.
And it's like, for example, Bella Humphries, wonderful comedian. She was directed by Esther Manito, but I was like, Esther Manito is like a powerful force, and Bella is, with the best will in the world, adorable. So it was very interesting.
Yeah, no, like structurally, like trying to help me make that. Because that was the thing. I didn't like I said it quite early. I don't want to rely on me just being like a big, loud, wacky personality who goes up on stage and goes, ah! I don't want that to be the driving force of the show. I want the story and the narrative to like make sense. And so that's where a lot of I felt like that was the thing I wanted, was the sort of structure and the more intricate sort of stuff, which Stu does very well.
Yeah.
That's where I came from.
So where do you go now? Are you going to be able to continue with this show? Are you going to be touring it, or are you working now on the difficult second album?
Well, so yeah, this is so I'm doing a show. Well, I'm doing so eBay last show, quotation marks, question mark, I don't know, is at Pleasance, London on the 8th of November. So I'm doing that one, but then it's so hard because like I feel this is I there's so many things I want to do within comedy, so I feel like I'm constantly spinning plates above me. So while I've been focusing on eBay, I hadn't really been focusing as much on like some of my writing projects and some of my other things.
Yeah,
I'm currently doing a delusion month where no, it's good.
That's every month, surely.
Yeah, it's good. It's every month. I'm leaning into it where I'm pretending that I don't need to worry about everything else. I am just going to write and create. And then November is when I'll begin worrying again. So a tiny pocket of like, I think it'll be okay. I'm trying to work on these other things because I feel like one of the things I've done a lot, and I think I'm quite good at it, is I just sort of fuck it, I'll just do it myself attitude. Like where like with it, like I gave up on theatre because I kept having to ask other people for things, and then I went, fuck it, I'm just going to do stand up because I rely on me, myself, and I create it myself, like do it myself, and then that sort of worked out for me. And then I produced this debut for myself with a lot of help from friends, with encouraging me with emails and doing things like, oh my god, lovely village of people around me going, come on, you can do it. I'm like, thank you. And then I had my PR and Stu. So I've sort of, it's so hard because I'm trying to be like really impressive of going, yes, I'm writing projects, but it's really like I'm writing with the delusion of being like, I think I could send a funding application to somewhere and get some money to try this, because I need that delusion now. I need it. That's something I really want to do, and I could sit around and wait for someone else to offer it to me, but I'm like, no, I'm just gonna do it now because that's what I want. Yeah. And my friend who I mentioned earlier, who's a nice, very successful, like a successful actor, comedy actor and things, he's got some experience in this. So I'm like, yeah, fuck it. That's my Delusion Month, currently working towards that. And then show 2, because show 2 is when I'm going to do my here's my story about me thing, and I kind of already started work on it, but I'm not looking to go up to Fringe again this year.
Right.
So I'm always like the next show, but it's the next show when I'm ready to do the Fringe again.
Yeah.
Mainly because, as I said earlier, this year, I feel like I've really messily told you what I'm currently planning working towards. I've gone all around the houses without just doing like a list. So now I'm bullet point list. I'm working with my dad, producing and directing this, what I'm hoping to be his hour, but he can still veto that and say he wants to do the 45 or whatever. And then also Fringe is very competitive again this year. So fingers crossed. Working with him. Then I'm working with the science comedy lot. So I do science comedy with universities and academics and PhD and researchers and lecturers, and having a wonderful time doing that. I've got a script actually I need to go through of one of the academics who have sent in a script, so I'm looking forward to reading that, and they're finding out about their scientific field through comedy and the jokes that they've written for me. So that's fun. So continuing work on that and hopefully developing some more projects within that.
Yeah.
Then writing my scripts with the intention of going, fuck it, I'm going to make it myself. I don't need someone else's approval right now. I would bloody love it, but I don't need it. So I'm gonna give it a go. And there was another working with me and Emily are doing some planning on an online sketch thing that we want to make. By saying out loud, I now have to do it. So, oh my god. And I think and then working towards show 2, which is the story about through trying to get a mental health diagnosis, I got accidentally diagnosed an alcoholic. And I know it's very funny. It's very funny because if you know me, you know that's ridiculous and very silly, but also like it was just a mad time, like having to ring up my doctors being like, I'm not an alcoholic, and they were like, sure you're not, and I'm like, fuck. So and then I also got medically advised to not mime so much, so it's going to be a mime show.
Medically advised to not mime.
I know, but alas, here we are. It's so but now with the less pressure of like me telling this story is going to be scary energy and more doing it for the joy of it because it's coming back for show 2. I think show 2s are normally filled with more joy because there isn't less pressure on it. Yeah. I mean, she says that, well, and you're going to turn around and go, actually, what you don't know, Ruby. Yeah, I think so.
It seems mad saying this to you, who are clearly such a performer, but obviously a lot of the time is spent writing. Do you see yourself as more as a writer or as a performer? Where are you happiest?
It's really hard because I think I feel like this sounds so wanky, but I feel like I'm really in the middle, like more of a deviser, if you understand. No, but like what I mean is that, like, I find that the act of writing for me naturally is very challenging because of being neurodivergent. I am dyslexic, and like literally the act of writing something down can be a torturous task, and so like writing creatively as opposed to analytical writing is when I really struggle, because that doesn't, I think what it is that analytical writing requires you to actually think linearly, to actually have the words come out linearly, like as they come. But when you're writing scripts and when you're writing something creative, it's really about the person, like the audiences or the person's perspective coming through. And so dialogue is messy. People are miscommunicating all the time. People mishear things. And so that works better with my brain when I'm trying to write a script. And thinking about something in 3D, I don't fucking know, but having that layered thinking where I cannot linear, like someone will be like, oh yeah, just write that down, and I'm like, oh, it just doesn't work. I can't just write something down because I'm thinking about 3 different sentences at once and I don't know which one I'm doing. And so I have that big, so I can't say I'm more of a writer because I am not actually. Like if I said that, I think I would start crying because I'm like, I can't do it. But I love writing. I love doing it. And I love getting out an idea and then like having it so that someone else can then experience the story that's been going on in my head. But then, yeah, to say I'm just a performer feels like I'm like not allowing myself that. But I've always found that. So when I'm writing a script, it will often be like I will talk something out loud, or I play this thing in my head, and then I have to write it down. I'll talk it with someone, and then through talking with someone, I solve something. I'm like, oh my god, and then I go and write that down. Or when I'm creating new bits of material, I'll get like out a couple of punchlines, but then I'm talking it with the audience the first time I'm doing it, and you'll find like little nuggets with them where you're like, oh, you laughed at that, why was that? Oh, it's because of this. And then so I feel like I can't just perform or just write. It's always a shared act when I'm creating something. Yeah. Was that wanky? I think that might have been like the most pretentious thing. But that, hey, who knows? I could have said something way more pretentious earlier, but didn't notice. I don't know.
Do you still watch comedy? Are you able to enjoy it as an entertainment? Are you over analytical? Can you watch it the same way as an audience can watch it? Or do you now see it purely with a comedian's mindset?
I really hope I still watch it enjoying it. I think that's I think what helps is going to a night or a show. um there's two different types of shows I'm thinking of. When I've been to see shows, I've been like, oh my god, I love that. Or I used to every month go watch Simon's Comedy Corner. So my friend Simon Thurdos, we mentioned earlier, she used to run a showcase show, which included stand-up acts, but also included short films and TikToks. And so it crossed a lot of things. I was like, amazing, I want to go see a curated night of all of those things. And I'd go watch that. And the show had a lot of joy in it. It was very lovely. And so then I was so excited to watch all the people who are up there. And so, yeah, so that I love going and watching shows like that where it's been fully curated. Yeah. I think you can get a lot of pessimism when you're at a, when you can, like when you're on a bill or whatever, when you're on an act. Oh, how do I say? I don't want to sound like a bitch. I feel like I'm leading up to being a bitch. If someone is a dick to me in the green room or at the back or has like a little bit of cocky energy, no, I'm not going to enjoy watching them. If someone's lovely, oh, I'm so excited to watch their set. I think that's the best way of putting it. And I'm not, it feels like then I'm going to be like, okay, wait. Let me dig myself out of this hole. I can do it. I promise. I'm going to go sideways. I'm not trying to be like direct about a person, but I think comedy in itself is bringing joy to people. It's being smiley, it's being lovely, it's being stupid. If someone comes with an energy of being like, I'm better than you, and that I've got that from open micers when I was an open micer, when someone's like, I'm the best person here, and you're like, oh, I don't like this energy, and this makes me not enjoy you on stage because I feel like now you're judging me. But if people come with joy and are coming to joy with the backstage area in the green room and with the audience, love that. Yeah. And that isn't supposed to be direct at anyone. I'm just thinking about the times when I've sat at gigs and been like, fuck this. And it's normally when I've done a newer act and you're in a horrible open mics night and there's no audience and it's just the other comedians at the back of the room with their arms crossed. And I'm like, yeah, well, I hate this. Yeah. I don't want to be here for this. And I try now to be very selective about the gigs that I go to and go watch. If they're there with joy and everyone's there having a lovely time, I'm having a great time. Yeah. I mean, did I dig myself out of that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's true. I mean, it's the whole thing about making a first impression, isn't it? Whether you make that first impression in a green room or in a conversation or to an audience when you step out on the stage, you've got 30 seconds. And if they like you as a comedian, they'll listen to what you have to say. And if you like that person you've just met, if you like that person in the green room, then you will let that relationship continue and develop just as much as if you were performing.
Yeah, just such a... Yeah, but this is what I'm like when I'm in the backstage area of anything. I'm like, hello, how are you? Woo! So yeah, I need people to give me that energy back. Yeah. Please, for the love of God.
Well, to give those people that opportunity, how can listeners find out about you and where they can come and see you performing?
Woo! Well, you can follow me on Instagram, Ruby Vroom Vroom, like a car, because it's a Ruby Carr. Which, yeah, I mean, I literally say this on stage, but it's because I used to work in a school and I was trying to make sure that the kids couldn't find me. And then I haven't changed it since, because I've stopped working in the school since then. I haven't changed it back because I really like it, and it might be really harming my comedy presence and people can't find me or whatever, but I think it's funny. So if you're meant to find me, you'll find me. It's Ruby Vroom Vroom. So yeah, on Instagram. And I just made a shiny website, very, very nice website, to try and give myself an online presence and show off accolades and like my work and my profession. So you can, hey, have a look at that. I'm spending £9 a month on it on Wix, so that'll be really nice.
What's the address?
Oh yeah, that's such a good point. Oh, you're so good at this, and I'm so bad. rubycarcomedy.com. What a nice domain name. And then yeah, I don't know when this is coming out, but if it's before the 8th of November, then I'm doing eBay at the Pleasance in London, and it's a really fun show, so you bloody love to come along. And then yeah, mostly I post things that I'm doing onto my Instagram. There is a Twitter account with that I'm associated with, but I don't use it. I just keep getting notifications for it, and I'm like, just don't bother with that. Don't bother. Like I'm not using it, and there's nothing you can do to make me. Sorry. And I'm just harming my own potential success. So yeah.
Ruby, my final question for you then, of course, as always, is how would you sum up comedy in a nutshell?
I'm miming a nutshell. I would say surprises, right? Comedy is sentences with surprises on the end of it, which I believe a much better comic has said that than me, or at least a much more famous comic has said that. But yes, I believe that's what comedy is. It's just sentences which you don't know how they're going to finish.
Almost like that sentence.
It's so true, because I really wasn't quite sure where I was going with that, with the wording.
Ruby, thank you so much. It's been a genuine joy, as I knew it would be. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had so much fun.